Garlis, Gregor, Rees, Madanovskis and Meakin, who make it through to the pre-final later. Oh, goodness me. That was a good race to start the day with. We've only got 10 more left of the weekend, but I tell you what, that was a perfect start. And now we come on to the next one, which is the X30 Senior starting grid for their second chance heat. Now, we've got 87 contenders racing in the X30 Seniors, and these are the 34 drivers who have a chance to get the last 6 places on the starting grid for the X30 Senior final. But there is also a race for those who weren't quite fortunate enough to make it into the last chance, and that is the Comet Cup, which we will come straight after this race into. So the battles are going to be very much intense right from the off here. And it's an all-Spanish front row for the X30 Senior second chance heat. Daniel Mejia and Oscar Palomo will battle it through to the first corner, and both of them have a good chance to make a good race out of this one. Juan Carlos Hernandez Ruiz on the second row alongside Christopher Shani. Philip Rawson of Great Britain and Etienne Chili of France will be on the third row of the grid, from Matilda Olsen of Sweden and Jason Lockwood of Great Britain on the fourth, and then Sylvester Alexievich of Poland alongside Nicolas Bayart of Belgium on the fifth row. So it's going to be an interesting one. And of course, once again, anybody who's on that inside line is going to be at a particular advantage to some of the other drivers on the starting grid. So you have to think that Mejia, Hernandez Ruiz, Rawson, Matilda Olsen and Sylvester Alexievich are all going to be in a really good position here, being on that inside line, and they will have a much bigger advantage than the guys on their left to charge down to that first corner, which is of course the right-hander at the far end of the circuit. So, whether that will give them a chance to go out and win, well, it's going to be tough, there's no doubt about that. But we've seen quite a few drivers with some very feisty racecraft over the course of the last 3 days. Philip Rawson of Great Britain has been particularly strong when the mood has gone his way. Daniel Mejia has always been close, but the fact that he now starts on pole position should give him a really good opportunity. Matilda Olsen has been incredibly feisty over the course of the weekend as well. Some good overtakes, some good battles, and very genuine strategy through the course of the race meetings. Now, a few of the heats haven't gone her way in terms of luck, but there's no doubting her ability, so we'll see how she goes. Sylvester Alexievich, and just behind him on the grid, actually, Francisco Moreno. Both of those two drivers could be very good over the course of the race, but obviously it is only a 10-lap encounter, so they'll have to get on with it pretty quickly. I don't want to count out the drivers on the even side, but obviously a lot of the race is dictated by that first corner. So we have to look at the possibility that Oscar Palomo and Christopher Shani have got an awful lot of responsibility on that formation lap to bring their side of the grid as far across alongside Daniel Mejia as is humanly possible to do. Otherwise, anybody on the even side is already compromised heading down to that first corner. It's very tricky around here, and anybody on that even side has definitely got their work cut out for them on the run to the first corner. It's not impossible to win from there, but it's definitely harder. So we'll have to see how the drivers cope with it. There's obviously going to be a lot of drivers to talk about in the run-up to this race, with 17 rows of karts to talk about on the starting grid. The whistle has gone in the pits, and that is the note, of course, that the mechanics are now going to clear the grid. So this gives us an opportunity to talk through the 17 rows of drivers who will bid for the final 6 places on the starting grid for the X30 Senior Final. Talk about a wake-up call for all of these drivers on the grid. It will be intense, and they know that. Daniel Mejia and Oscar Palomo will be on the front row of the grid, both from Spain. Juan Carlos Hernandez Ruiz and Christopher Shani on the second row of the grid. Philip Rawson and Etienne Chili will be on the third row of the grid, with Sweden's Matilda Olsen on the inside line of row 4 alongside Jason Lockwood of Great Britain. Inside the top 10 as well, Sylvester Alexievich and Nico Bayart from Belgium. They finished the top 10. Then behind them, the Spaniard Francisco Moreno alongside Ireland's Ross Hayes. Row 7 of the grid is Vincent Rouard along with Carlos Martinez on row 7. Then it is Enzo Giraud and Scott Jackson on the 8th row of the grid. Stefan Planchamp of Switzerland lines up beside Niels Kuhlen on the 9th row of the grid. And then we have Tyler Reid of Great Britain and Sweden's Axel Bengtsson on the 10th row. And that's only the top 20. Ben Wooldridge of Great Britain lines up beside Sweden's Isaac Valtonen. And then we have Sebastian Degrand of Belgium alongside his countryman Evan Becerra. Manuel Galofre lines up beside Robin Knutson for Sweden and Spain and Sweden, respectfully, I should say. Jacob Ang of the Philippines is alongside the Frenchman Hugo Valle. Then we have Teddy Pritchard Williams of Great Britain alongside Luis Beloso on the 15th row of the grid. And that makes up the top 30. And then the final 4 drivers, we have Jack Ailiff of Switzerland, alongside the local man Kevin Tenorio, who lives just down the road from here. And then on the back row of the grid, we have the Brit and the American-Japanese, Henry Laws and Reese Ushijima. So it will be an interesting one and a tough fight for everybody. But at this point, the drivers all know that this is their last opportunity to get into the pre-final and win the IAME Winter Cup. They all know how difficult it is. They all know how tough it's going to be. Anybody on the inside line is at a distinct advantage, and they are already fully and acutely aware of that. But anybody on the even side has now got to roll their sleeves up, shoulders back, arch forward, and crack on. It is going to be a very tough 10 laps, and they know just how much is on the table here. We saw how intense the X30 Junior second chance heat was. Well, the second chance heat in the X30 Senior should be even more so, with almost double the size of the grid. And as the drivers get themselves ready for the off, I'm not entirely sure how to call this one. It could be somebody on the odd side. We could go with tradition. However, with so many drivers so closely matched in the X30 Seniors, as we've already mentioned in qualifying on Friday, of the 87 drivers who entered, 62 of them were covered by less than a second. Just try and separate them. It is very, very hard indeed. And while we know who the favourites for the overall victory are, trying to call this second chance heat is very, very tough indeed. So, as the drivers get themselves ready to go, it is Daniel Mathia for Praga, España, who leads them out from his countryman Oscar Palomo in the Unimatricular K team, and we get underway. Mathia and Palomo, Hernandez and Shani, Rawson and Chile, Olsen and Lockwood, Alexievas and Beart, Moreno and Hayes, Ruar and Martinez, Giraud and Jackson, Blanchard and Kulin, Reed and Bengtson, Wooldridge and Valtonen, Degrand and Becerra, Galofre and Knutson, Ang and Vaya, Williams and Beloso, Ailiff and Tenorio, and Laws and Ushijima. The formation lap begins, and the drivers get themselves neat and tidy around the circuit, just trying to warm up the tyres, the brakes, and of course the carbs. Everybody wants to get themselves absolutely up to scratch and ready for the off. This is a very tense race, and you'd be surprised how many drivers, teams, mechanics and engineers have come onto the wall to watch. Noting just a few of the drivers who are also in this class, trying to see who potentially could be a threat. Even from the back of the grid, all of the drivers who have already made it through have got to try and keep an eye on what's going on. I noticed one of those who qualified very easily yesterday, Dean McDonald, sat on the pit wall, just trying to keep an eye on what's going on. And, well, he might, because there are still plenty of talented drivers in this grid who could be a fighting force. Don't forget that we've already mentioned in qualifying, 62 drivers covered by less than a second over one lap. How do you separate them? Well, put them all on the same grid and see who comes out in front. That's basically all you can do. But with 2 Spaniards on the front row, it's definitely looking good for the local contingent. And with Juan Carlos Hernandez Ruiz on third on the grid, that inside line is definitely going to be tough for Philip Rawson to break through. But being on the inside on the third row, he has a good opportunity. But don't count out Oscar Palomo or Christopher Shani. Also on that third row is the very feisty Frenchman Etienne Chely, who's been very good. And I would put some money on the Swede Matilda Olsen to come through and do a cracking good job. She was very good yesterday. Maybe this is her opportunity to break back into the main grid. So the drivers getting themselves ready and as up to speed as they possibly can. And drivers will now put themselves into their rows. Mathia, Paloma, Hernandez, Shani, Rawson, Chile, Olsen, Lockwood, Alexievas and Beart on the first 5 rows of the grid. And then we've still got another 24 drivers behind them, all trying to break through. This one will be intense. Out of that final chicane, the outside line has got to be as even as they can with the odds. That's a really good start, actually, and we are away. Palomo comes straight across to try and get alongside Hernandez Ruiz. It's not quite going to be enough. It's going to be great starts for Rawson and for Olsen. In fact, Olsen's trying to break through into third position immediately and been impeded. Olsen is now going to slip down to 5th position, but she's still right in there with a good chance. As 3 into 1 don't go over the chicane, and it's all got a little bit hectic. 2 or 3 drivers getting a cropper there in the S's at around 6th or 7th place, and that has broken the top 5 away. The rest of the field all stagger clear, so 6th position could be an absolute battering ram with so many drivers in the fight for it, but that has broken the top 5 clear, and it looks pretty good to me. Mathia looks good. 2nd position, that looks like Hernandez Ruiz. And I think also in the mix there, we've got Philip Rawson. Trying to see who that is in 4th place. I think that might be Etienne Shelley, and Matilda Olsen is there in 5th position. So at the moment, with those 5 having broken clear, they look safe and sound to me, but they've got to keep the pace up. So across the line they come. It is Mathia, Hernandez, Rawson. It is Shani rather than Shelley. Matilda Olsen. The man on the bubble at the moment is Oscar Palomo with Etienne Shelley right behind him. Here comes Etienne Shelley, and I think has already tried to make the move up the inside. Look, there goes the Persistence Motorsport card. Straight up the inside for Jason Lockwood. Jason Lockwood now puts himself into 7th position, trying to chase down the Spaniard Oscar Palomo. So Jason Lockwood is in 7th place, and he's got to try and close in on Palomo. Otherwise, his race weekend is over. Oh, a little bit tricky up at the front as Mathia gets a little bit over the line there. He's running a little bit deep, obviously under some pressure from Hernandez. Philip Rawson right there in 3rd position. He's going to be a threat for definite. And the battle for 4th position behind sees Matilda Olsen get right on the back of Chris Shani. So Christopher Shani doing his best. Oh, he's got a little bit out of shape. Matilda Olsen could strike here into the first corner. And Chris Shani signals to Matilda Olsen, help me, help me. No chance. I'm going through into 4th position. Matilda Olsen goes through. Great overtaking move there from Matilda. Through the S's. And 6th position, Palomo is closing in on them as well. Jason Lockwood is not having a lot of joy trying to close up the gap. He's got pressure from Sylvester Alexievas, Enzo Giraud, and Nico Bayart as well. So the battle for 7th position looks like it's on a hiding to nothing at the moment. Daniel Mathia, the Spaniard for Praga España, continues to lead the way in front of Hernandez. Philip Rawson is right there from Matilda Olsen, Christopher Shani, and on the back of him now is Oscar Palomo. Now Lockwood has dropped back into 9th position. There's a little bit of wheel banging as the battle for 7th position intensifies between Alexievas and Giraud. Down the back straight, they continue on their way, but the top 6 are well clear. It looks as though it's all sorted. Thumbs up on the pit wall for any of the drivers coming through in the top 6. You're doing fine. So now it looks as though Palomo's going to make a very late lunge up the inside and gets the move on Christopher Shani. So Palomo goes through into 5th position. The Unimatricular driver has gone through into P5, and that's not bad for the man on the front row of the grid. He didn't lose too much time in the end of it all. But Matilda Olsen, we knew she was going to be a threat, and she has got through into P4 and is looking good to be in that pre-final. Excellent stuff for the Swede. Out in front, though, it is Spain, Britain, Sweden, Spain, and France at the moment. That is your top 6 countries that are going through. It is Mathia from Hernandez, Rawson, Olsen. Then it is Palomo in front of Christopher Shani. Here comes Oscar Palomo on the back of Matilda Olsen, just trying to edge her a little bit closer to the top 3. Working together, trying to get that gap down if they can. Now Rawson looks really strong on the back of Hernandez. I think he's got a good run here. He might go for 2nd position. No, he's not. He's trying to work him closer to Mathia as up the inside. Palomo makes the move on Olsen, and that's going to keep the door open for Shani. Shani gets through. No, he doesn't. Olsen shuts the door. Beautifully done. So Matilda Olsen determined not to be on the bubble. As the battle for 7th place is getting very heated, Enzo Giraud now finds himself at the front of the queue from Alexievas, Lockwood, Hayes, Martinez, Bayard, Shelley, Wooldridge, Reed, Blanchamp, Gallofre, Ruar, Beloso and Knutson. But out in front, Rawson is still working hard to help Hernandez get further forward, but he's not really getting close to Mathia. He may have to overtake him and get some assistance himself, as there's a couple of drivers running far on the far side. Just looking through the field to see if we've lost any of the drivers. Unfortunately, no Francisco Moreno. Francisco Moreno does not appear to be continuing to circulate around the circuit, so it looks like it's all done and dusted for him. But out in front, Daniel Mathia still looks good for Praga España. Then it is Hernandez, Rawson, Palomo, Olsen, and Shani. That is your top 10, and it's looking safe and sound. It's an absolute squabble further down the order, as the rest of the drivers into turn 1, all having an immense fight. They continue to battle away around the circuit as Lockwood goes absolutely hammer and tongs with 2 or 3 of his combatants, and it's getting a little bit heated there. Lockwood in with the likes of Martinez, Hayes and Alexievas. Enzo Giraud has managed to build out a little bit of a gap, and it's now Alexievas, Lockwood, Martinez and Hayes who are having a great scrap. Nico Bayart is leading the chasing cavalry. But Rawson is in there behind Hernandez for 2nd and 3rd position. Hernandez doing a good job in 2nd place, but Mathia has got himself a good gap. And knowing the track very well indeed, he has got himself a good advantage. So from pole position, Daniel Mathia looks good. 2nd place, Hernandez. 3rd position, Rawson. Fourth place looks like it's going to be Oscar Palomo. Fifth for Matilda Olsen. And sixth place for Shani. And once again, Shani is going to make the move on the inside of Olsen. Gets through, no problem at all for the moment. Olsen's going to try and come back on the inside, but she's got a gap back to Enzo Giraud, so it looks okay for the moment. Oh, a big mistake there from Shani as he goes up and over the curbs, and Matilda Olsen trying to come through. And this is getting very heated indeed in the lower rankings as drivers are swarming about all over the place, aware of the fact that they're not in the top six, but still wanting to move up through the field as much as they possibly can. The high movers, Ben Waldridge in particular, has gone up 10 places, is up in 11th position. More progress made as well from Tyler Reid. He's up to 12th, but the man on the move really is the Spaniard Luis Beloso, who started 30th and is now in 16th place. He's doing a great job. Now we've lost the Dutchman, Niels Koelen. Niels Koelen has retired from the race. I didn't see where he came off the circuit, but Niels Koelen appears to have retired from the race. Now, the battle of a second is getting very heated. Hernandez still holds it, but Rawson has been caught by Oscar Palomo. So now, it is the three Spaniards and Philip Rawson. Christopher Shani, is still in fifth position in front of Matilda Olsen. Those six looking safe and sound at the moment with 3 laps to go. Philip Rawson still biding his time. The Brit is waiting to see if he can pounce on Hernandez. But Daniel Mathia is looking okay at the lead of this race for Praga, España. He looks very strong indeed. The FA Racing Spain driver has been passed now. Hernandez is down to third. Philip Rawson makes the move. So Philip Rawson has got through and takes second position. The team will be very happy indeed with that one. And to be fair, Philip Rawson has deserved this one. He's working very hard to get himself further up the road. But the CRG driver now finds himself in second place. So can he maintain that position? It's going to be tight, especially now with 2 laps to go. Daniel Mathia still leads, and he is safe and sound. Second is Rawson. Third is Hernandez. Fourth is Palomo. The 5th and 6th position battle still quite a long way in front of Enzo Giraud, but the Frenchman Giraud is still trying to catch them. And if they start battling on the last couple of laps, then it could well be all over. Does Matilda Olsen settle for 6th position and sit behind Christopher Shani, or does she go for it and risk the possibility of Enzo Giraud closing up? It is going to be a tough one, whichever way you slice it. So Daniel Mathia still leads the way. It all looks good from his point of view. He's out in front and controlling the pace, dominating proceedings down the back straight. Philip Rawson in second position, being caught rapidly now by Hernandez, who's getting very feisty on the back exhaust as they go into the final chicane. Right, left, and right. Rawson looks good. Hernandez has got a good exit, though. He may want to try something on Rawson. He looks back. Palomo's not close enough to do anything. And good defensive driving from Rawson on the inside line. Olsen makes the move on Shani and gets into 5th position. Good move there from Matilda Olsen, and that secures her position in the pre-final for the moment. Shani's going to need to do something drastic to come back, but Shani is still looking okay to get through if he just remains where he is. If it starts to get a little bit dicey, then that could potentially bring Enzo Giraud into the action. So they've got to think about it. Daniel Mathia, safe and sound in the lead. He's not going to lose that one now. In second, has an opportunity to get through. This could decide it. Mathia comes to the final chicane. Hernandez is going to pop out to try and make a move on Rawson. Rawson defends, no problem at all. The checkered flag flies. It's Daniel Mathia who wins. Rawson second, Hernandez third, Palomo fourth, Matilda Olsen is fifth, and 6th place is Christopher Shani. And those 6 go through. Fantastic. Enzo Giraud tried his best, just didn't quite get close enough. Sylvester Alexievas is 8th. What a fight through for Ben Waldridge, making up 12 places, and he gets into the top 10 in 9th place. Carlos Martinez is 10th in front of Ross Hayes, Stefan Planchamp, and Tyler Reid, who made up 6 places. Robin Knutson came up well, the Swede up 12 places to 14th. Hugo Ver came up 13 places to 15th. Luis Beloso came up 14 places to 16th. Good run from all 3 of those. Jason Lockwood sadly faded away into 17th position. Right up near the front initially, but not a great race for him in the end. Isaac Valtonen in 18th from Jacob Ang and Evan Becerra. Etienne Chely had an even worse day at the office, dropping all the way down to 21st in the end. Not a great race. Vincent Rouard in 22nd from Manuel Galofre, Teddy Williams, Scott Jackson, Jack Aliff, Axel Benson, Sebastian Degrand, Henry Laws, Nico Bayart all the way down to 30th in the end, and Reese Ushijima coming home in 31st. The retirements, sadly the local man Kevin Tenorio pulled off with 2 laps to go. And then we also had the retirements from Niels Kuhlen and Francisco Moreno. But what a race, and that confirms that the top 6 that go through are Daniel Mathia, Philip Rawson, Juan Carlos Hernandez Ruiz, Oscar Palomo, Matilda Olsen, and Christopher Shani. Very good stuff indeed from those 6, and we will see them a little later on. Well, time to breathe, as we've got another race.